Okay. Now, I have to admit, I mean, even though we're writing about PR and I'm fairly familiar with PR in Holland, I have no clue how it works in France. So could you give me a quick idea? And did you ever vote in France, or did you?
Oh, well, yeah, I couldn't wait to vote as soon as I got to 18. In fact, when I was 15 was the presidential election, 88, I believe, yeah. And so that was the second time Mitterrand went back in, and I really became very politicized then. So in France, well, now I live in the UK. I've lived here over 25, 26 years now. So it's always a shock to me how many people vote in the UK compared to in France. I think people in France really feel that their voting right is much more, present inside them. So voting is very important. So
What's the
you
percentage? How many people vote in
I
France?
think it's regularly over 60%.
Yeah, it's the same in
Definitely.
Holland, 70, 80, something
Yeah.
like that.
And the very important election to me is the presidential election, because you get to vote for one person. So it's not a team like in the US, it's not two people, it's just really the one person to represent France. And you there's always two rounds. I think there is a possibility that if the person would get 50% outright, there wouldn't be a second round, but there are always two rounds. So that gives a possibility for every single party to present themselves. They need to get, I think, 500 signatures of elected mayors and people like that in order to be able to apply for presenting themselves. So that means a massive range of candidates, and which means the debate is quite interesting. Loads of people have, obviously there are smaller parties on smaller issues or single issues, but it's very important. And so there's an official campaign period where everybody gets exactly the same time of speaking publicly.
Okay, airtime. Yeah.
So
Okay.
if there's, say, 12 candidates, I think, every time we vote, and that means that you get to hear every single candidate for the same time. So we vote the first round, and then basically the highest two gets through to the second round. There are cases, I think, but I can't remember exactly how, that a third candidate could potentially be on the second round, but that's just not happened in my
That's
lifetime.
not happened in your life. Okay, yeah. Okay.
So the second round becomes where obviously the two higher candidates try to talk to the public and to the candidates that didn't get through, in order to perhaps promise things, and in order for the candidates that didn't get through to pass their votes on. So that doesn't happen of all candidates. They sometimes don't pass their votes on, which creates a bit of chaos.
And
But
by passing their vote on, you mean that they recommend that you vote for the
that's it. That's
okay.
it. Yeah. Yeah. It's still absolutely
So it's not absolutely free. It's not like they have votes that they can give to, it's the people, the people decide.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so once the president is elected, then there's also the parliamentary election, and usually so that's changed in fairly recent years. We used to have the assembly, which is the parliament, used to be every 5 years, and it's still every 5 years, but the president used to be every 7.
Okay.
So when a president of a different color came in, usually he would dissolve the parliament, and there would be a parliamentary election at the start of his 7 years.
Okay.
Which meant that then 5 years later, for his last 2 years, there would be another. There was another parliamentary election.
Yeah.
So that used to just. It was fairly stable in the 50s, 60s, 70s, but after. So I know. Well, it's probably the first time was the second mandate of Mitterrand. He ended up with a right-wing parliament. So when
he was a left-wing candidate, wasn't he? So, and he ended up with the right. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So when the parliament has a majority, then the president is obliged to take from that majority, nominate a prime minister, who then creates the
coalition government, probably.
Yeah, that's right. The government.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in Mitterrand's case, he then had he took Chirac as a prime minister. So there was a coalition between the president and the parliament.
Okay.
So when then was it Chirac got elected as a president 2 years later, and he dissolved the no, he didn't dissolve the parliament. And then we had 3 years later, he had a coalition which was longer. So it became a bit messy, if you know what I mean. Because obviously in a coalition, you achieve a lot less. So following a few rounds of that, they decided to change to have 5 years for both.
Okay. So but can you then end up with 5 years for it? Can you then end up with say, a left-wing president and a right-wing parliament?
Well, it's not happened.
But is it technically possible?
Yeah, if the people were doing that, yes. So Macron had a bit of so Macron came out of nowhere basically, and within like just over a year, he created this new party and got elected as a president, which was just out of this world, because it was always like the dual, left, right, whatever. So he created this entirely new party, and then he had to actually a few weeks later we had to go again for parliament, and it was very, very crucial for him that he would get a majority, and it wasn't at all guaranteed, because the people so for parliament, it's member of parliament, a bit like here, they're local people, there's counties and whatever. So all the people that he had in his new party were much younger, were people from the population, basically doctors and all sorts of all the different backgrounds.
Yeah, no professional politicians.
Yeah, as opposed to politicians.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Okay.
But he pulled it off. So it worked for him. So he has had 5 years with his elected. However, I think he's dissolved his government already twice.
Okay.
Twice or three. Yeah, it's a third prime minister, I think we've got now.
Okay. And the parliament is how does that work? Just is it just parties like it is in most of Europe, and with a threshold to get in as a party, and what's the threshold like?
It's the same. So it's every vote counts. So every person votes count, and it's 2 rounds again.
Okay.
And so again, so you look at a locality, and you have all the parties that present themselves, and then the 2 main ones go through, and then you vote. Okay,
so you have really, so it's proportional representation as well as first past the post, but only, so it's like a sort of pre-selection sort of.
Well, so basically, if a candidate were to make the threshold of 50% of the electorate of whoever has voted, it is decided that a second round wouldn't be useful, because he
Okay.
would
Okay.
first and he would again repeat that.
Okay.
But it's not a first past the post.
Okay.
It's just you take the two main ones to start to vote again.
Okay. So there's always a voting again.
There
Pretty
is,
much.
and it kind of it's a bit heavy, but it kind of avoids the risk of having somebody like, say, it's always been the case. So the left-wing parties, there's the Greens, there's more left. Maybe I'm biased, but I'm looking at the left as an example. But there's more factions in the left.
Yeah, I think that's the case everywhere in Europe anyway. That there's lots of
and people run for single issues, etc. So say you've got.
So it's actually the way you describe it is actually fairer because people get a chance to then cast their vote again for the remaining candidate, and they can say, okay, well, I'm not really pleased, but I'm going to vote for the guy that gets closest to what I believe in. Okay.
It's because it gives more possibility for more candidates at the start. You want to avoid the fact that it would dilute the votes in a way that somebody might get a spike of votes and be above everybody else, but only at, say, 15%. If you know what I mean. If you divide 100% by 15 candidates, then you risk getting someone in. First past the post would get someone in on a very small.
Yes. So it's actually a sort of a safety mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Make sure that people also stay involved and don't feel like, it's a safe seat for the other party, so I might as well not go and vote. Maybe that explains the low interest in voting in the UK. Do you think?
Yeah, well, certainly so I've only been voting 2 times, and because I became British in 2018, I've not managed to vote for anyone who's gone who's passed yet, apart from in the EU elections. But the EU elections don't work first past the post.
No, exactly.
And when you look at the proportions of people voting here, and you add up parties who would naturally be in agreement, there's always more than whoever's been elected, and I find that so.
So you would argue that if the UK had the French system, we'd be looking at a completely different landscape.
I believe so, yeah. But I don't want to. I don't understand the history of the systems enough, perhaps, to I don't know why it was chosen this way rather than another way, and I don't want to comment on that necessarily, but I feel safe with the French system.
Yeah.
And I feel represented, and I feel that I can.
That you make a difference. Yes.
And that there is a really good quality debate, because the candidates know that if they don't talk to the public and they don't interact and represent them really, then they don't get voted in. And I think even the candidates realize that, on the second round, that I think these conversations that they have with the other candidates who could recommend to vote for them are also an excellent way to put pressures where it needs to be.
Yeah, and also it's also a way to sort of play nice, isn't it? I mean, you have to,
and if you don't
get on.
If say, so I think I don't want to, again, I'm hoping that the French election will go well, but if Macron has got trouble getting back in, it might be because he promised things or talked to some of the candidates during his campaign first time round and then didn't deliver. And that in France is not something that you can just sit and say, oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
No. So,
It's real accountability.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have integrity. I don't know. I feel that system works.
Yeah. And were you taught about the system at school?
Oh yes, gosh, yes.
Talk about that a little bit, because we found out that is very different in different countries. So tell me how that worked.
I don't remember very much in primary, but certainly you go at age 11, you go to college, and then you start civic education, and it's part of, like, you get at least an hour a week, and it goes up when
by the time you're eligible to vote, you know exactly how the system works.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And you've practiced it, and you practice it at school, and there's all sorts of writing a constitution. All these things are just sort of embedded in education. Definitely.
So it's also that contributes to the buy-in of the general population, and the commitment they have to vote and listen to the votes and listen to what people are telling them and before they.
I think so. By understanding the system, you feel you've got your part to play, and I think in France definitely. Again, this is something I've learned since being here, since the referendum, since I feel that in France we know that we have power. The people have power.
Yeah, they have influence and power, and they have a say, and they feel that by not voting, they're actually giving their own say away, and they don't want to do that. Okay.
And I think the politicians also know that. I mean, there's a history of people rising, toppling off the whatever that is there that's not working, and I think there is this constant this feeling of respect between
there's an interaction between voters and politicians, and they don't get too far away from each other.
No. And we get laughed at because we protest all the time, and we do all sorts of silly I don't know, manifestation, but it is a dialogue,
isn't it? It's all part of that belief that you do make a difference.
Yeah, two-way street.
Yeah. Thank you, Em. That's really, really, really interesting. I have to admit, I mean, it's been a real pleasure to find out about different systems in our European Union and Europe. And I wish we could do 26 countries, but we're going to start off with 3 this time round. Thank you so much for doing this.
That's
and
okay.
Maybe next time we'll do some other countries if we do another special on PR. But thank you for your time.
Yeah, I'm sure we can recruit other.
I'm sure we can. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you so much.